Welcome to the Bourbon Van. I know how to beat the cold. Let's go drink some beer and whiskey. Come on. Welcome to Deschutes Brewery in Bend, Oregon.
Today we've been invited to try a brand new whiskey that's just been released from Crater Lake Spirits called Black Butte Whiskey, and it's their Cask Strength version for the very first time. And we're going to have a couple of special guests, and we're going to try this whiskey against 4 Deschutes Brewing beers that are all part of the family here. We're going to get started with a tasting of the whiskey itself, and after that we'll move on to the beers to see how they all play off of one another and see if drinking these beers side by side with the whiskey brings out new flavors in the whiskey or in the beers, or we're just going to have a tasting adventure. One way or another, here we go.
It's a hard day at the office.
So we're super lucky to have Alan Dietrich from Crater Lake Spirits here to tell us a little bit more about where this whiskey came from, the concept of it, how it's made, and all that. But why don't we talk first about the Cask Strength whiskey itself? What was the impetus for that?
It was the market that was asking for it. I mean, the popularity of whiskeys has exploded in the last several years. What a Cask Strength does is it gives you the opportunity to customize the whiskey so the flavors you want come out at the proof that you want to drink it at.
Well, I was definitely one of the people that was asking for it at Cask Strength, so that sounds familiar. What about the process? We know that the beer sort of begets the whiskey, which sort of begets more of the beer.
Yeah. In the case of the Black Butte whiskey, we were going for the very particular mash bill that gives Black Butte its particular flavor profile, and we wanted to adapt that to a whiskey. When we started this, we just called it a whiskey, but now there has been a lot of traction in the American Malt whiskey category, and it's now an approved class with the TTB. So the Black Butte, which has always been an American Malt whiskey, we can now officially call it an American Malt whiskey. And we can even correctly say it's an American single malt.
It's actually super exciting. We're big fans of American single malt. We're also big fans of Oregon American single malt, which there's an awful lot of really good ones that seem like they're right here in this part of the country. Do you notice the same thing? Do you credit that to anything in particular?
Within Oregon, I think the same reason why the craft spirit revolution pretty much started here, as did the craft beer revolution and some of the best wines made in the world. It's just an entrepreneurial spirit. We've always had a penchant for doing something with the bounty of Oregon. Grapes in the valley, the beer concept throughout the state, certainly. And the secret weapon on this side of the mountains is the water. You can make just some spectacular distilled spirits because we have just spectacular water. So this started, Jim Bendis, our founder of Bendis Distillery and Crater Lake Spirits, had experimented with a single barrel of distilled Black Butte Porter beer. Oh, I mean, it had to have been late 90s. And we always kind of knew, sitting back there in the corner, it wasn't a very refined product. He hadn't done much whiskey before. But when we moved warehouses in the middle 2000s, we found that barrel again and tried it. And it was at that point probably 10 or 12 years old. And it was just spectacular. So we asked Gary and the Deschutes team to come over, and we did a tasting. And we pitched the idea of actually doing it the right way. And that was the genesis of the project. And ever since then, Deschutes has delivered to us 3 or 4 times a year a huge batch of unhopped Black Butte Porter beer that we then distill and age and turn into Black Butte whiskey.
How many years have you been creating this now? Because every year it's a new version.
It's a new version. This is the 8th year, I believe.
Fantastic.
Yep.
And the family seems to be growing. You went from was it 3-year, I believe, to a 5-year that's out now.
Correct.
And now this Cask Strength, which is also 5
Yep.
years.
And in between there we had, for the Deschutes' Anniversary, we did a port-aged and a sherry barrel-aged version. Those have since sold out, but we've experimented with a lot of different things, and there's some other projects.
That was the next question. Anything you wanted to reveal?
Yeah, there's more. All I can say is there's more coming, and some really exciting things coming.
Whiskey with a beer back. Is that something you're into, or beer with a whiskey back?
I absolutely encourage people to do any whiskey with a beer back. In fact, that adds another Another level of appreciation, having a small glass of porter with your Black Butte Porter whiskey is a natural. But there are so many complementary beers out there to whiskeys, and I'd love to give you, a list of which ones you should have with which ones, but it doesn't exist. You got to go and experiment, and that's, again, part of the fun of this. It's not just drinking, but it's educating, it's building a palate, it's creating just a knowledge base of what you like and broadening your horizons.
There you have it. That's the Black Butte Whiskey Genesis, the product. And now what we're going to do is exactly what we just talked about. We're going to taste side by side the Black Butte Whiskey Cask Strength alongside these 4 varieties of Deschutes Brewing beer to see how they match up against the whiskey and see if we can pull some flavors from both the beer and the whiskey we might not have noticed before. We're going to start with Black Butte Whiskey's Cask Strength. It's 125 proof, aged 5 years. As we said, made by Crater Lake Spirits here in Oregon, and we've had lots of their different variations over the past few years. Obviously, we've been getting into this one a little bit, and so far, so good. But let's do a proper tasting of it here on camera for the very first time.
It just smells great.
It's very rich. This is a whiskey that smells as dark as it looks. Vanilla, oak, beautiful brown sugar flavors.
We should talk about that. Look at that beautiful color here. It really is spectacular, and it's all the most amazing cask strength flavors. The oak is wonderful. You can smell the richness almost already. I can't wait to taste it.
Yeah, I don't really want to wait anymore.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Oh my gosh, it's so chocolatey. Holy smokes, that was so good. It was like super oaky, and then it had really nice hints of like caramely vanilla fudginess, and then that chocolate just came through. It was so delicious.
I can't really say it better. There's a little bit of a sort of a dark, rich caramel, chocolate, vanilla. It's the darkness.
Yeah.
We've obviously been falling in love, at least I have, with American single malt whiskeys over the past couple of years, especially this past year. This is right up there with the best of them. This is fantastic.
I want to keep drinking this, but I know that we're going to be pairing them with 4 different beers, so I have to be conscientious of my sips today.
I think that's a good idea. Let's get right on to the first beer, which is sort of the namesake whiskey and godfather, maybe?
Like it.
Black Butte Porter.
Black Butte Porter was one of the first beers that Deschutes Brewery ever produced. And in 1988, Gary Fish, our founder, chose to lead with a porter during a time when it wasn't necessarily something people were super familiar with. It really is what put Deschutes Brewery on the map. Black Butte Porter remains the #1 craft porter in the country, even though Deschutes only really distributes to about 36, 37 states.
It's a big beer, so we're going to share it.
Right.
So I've fallen into this habit now because we're drinking so much whiskey that now I smell my beers as well.
I think that's a good idea.
Is it a good idea? I don't remember doing that before, but this smells like I want to drink it.
It's the introduction. You should meet your beers. And by the way, pairing a beer and a whiskey, one of our all-time favorite things to do.
Oh, nice. Ooh, this is going to be an interesting tasting. This has a wonderful nuttiness to it, kind of like a chocolate covered nuts in there, which you do get that chocolatiness here, but the pairing is just so lovely. Like it's a perfect pairing even in the first one.
That is
Ooh, the flavors come out so nicely.
roasty, toasty, coffee-tastic. I'm gonna go back to the whiskey, see what happens.
I'll just keep drinking the beer. Oh, this is gonna be a fun exercise.
This is my favorite kind of exercise, coincidentally. I actually found a lot more vanilla on the whiskey after visiting the beer. Mm-hmm. The beer has a nice bitterness, even though it's not an overly bitter beer. It's also very sweet, but that bitterness brought out some fantastic sweet notes in the whiskey, particularly the vanilla and a little bit of that sugary, I want to say brown sugar, but it's pretty light brown.
It actually tastes incredibly different going back to the whiskey. That chocolate was just so rich on that first sip, and now that brown sugar is really showing itself a little bit more just after drinking just 1 or 2 sips of that beer.
The brown sugar and the vanilla become the focus all of a sudden on the whiskey after sipping on that. Absolutely fantastic pairing. I'm glad we started this way.
Me too. On to the next one?
On to the next one.
Black Butte Anniversary. Several years back, we started doing a barrel-aged version of Black Butte Porter to celebrate our birthday in June 27th, 1988. So each year, our brewers are inspired by something new. This year, it was inspired by tiramisu with lovely notes of vanilla and coffee. So that is a really fun project that we look forward to every year.
All right, next up, the bottle that I think you've been looking forward to this more than anything else.
When Aaron was describing what this bottle was going to taste like, I got very excited. I love tiramisu, and I'm hoping that's what I'm going to be drinking.
Well, it is 11%, and so we will proceed with caution. Let's get right to it.
This has an interesting aroma. It almost smells not spicy, but a little bit spicy. Wanna
Yeah, let's stick my nose in there.
stick your nose in there?
Oh, it smells like some sort of delicious pastry. A delicious pastry that I'd like to drink as soon as possible.
I know, and I think that it almost has, I mean, if you live here, you kind of get it, but it has a bit of an Oregonian smell to it.
Oregonian?
Yeah, like running through the trees.
Okay.
Ooh, that's nice.
Exceptionally tasty, and you're right, there's spice there. And we have professionals here to tell us.
Vanilla,
Yes,
coffee,
Yes.
cardamom.
maybe it's the power of suggestion, but I get all three of those things.
Perfect. Cardamom, a very, again, Oregonian flavor.
Is it?
I literally had never had cardamom in anything before we moved here, and I find it all over the place. Cinnamon rolls, ocean rolls, which I had never heard of, but that's a big thing here.
All this stuff sounds delicious. Have you been hiding this stuff from me? You never shared that kind of thing with me.
You get it at work and stuff.
That's the thing. I should start working.
Where you took that Black Butte, that lovely chocolate note, all of those, I'm going to call them the baseline flavors. This got ramped up, more desserty, a lot of spices, a lot of flavor. Delicious. I want to try the whiskey.
I was going to say what it did for the whiskey was actually really special, I think, because I'm getting more of the richness on the sweet side of things from the caramel now. And again, the chocolate has faded a little bit to the background. It's really more of a bready, almost cakey sort of thing that's showing up now. And the oak is actually showing up a little bit more here too.
That whiskey is delicious all on its own.
Yes.
But to pair it with the beer, it's just adding something so wonderful to the experience.
I'm going to do it again too.
I know, and the flavors are just dynamite.
That spice is unique in that beer. I don't think I've ever tasted anything like that on a beer before.
It is an anniversary beer, so you have to be a little bit special when it's your anniversary.
34 years of expertise. I feel like you can taste that there.
Black Butte Cubed is an incredible beer that we all love. It is something that we take the Black Butte Porter that then goes to Ben Distillery and Crater Lake Spirits to create the Black Butte whiskey. Then we take those barrels and age our Anniversary Porter. So then it's, this full circle of life for our Black Butte Porter, and it just comes out with an incredibly decadent, amazing version of this barrel-aged porter.
I'm really excited about this next one, but it makes me a bit nervous.
I think that that's a fair thing to say about this next one. It's Black Butte Cubed. This is the Imperial Black Butte Porter brewed with cocoa powder, aged in locally distilled Black Butte Porter whiskey casks, and it comes in at a fairly sizable 15.1%.
We're ramping it up.
Yeah, if you're pairing these two, maybe it's a one whiskey, one beer kind of night.
Yeah, or stay home on your couch. Sit on your couch.
Share it with
Enjoy
friends.
That.
That's some reaction.
Wow. It smells boozy.
Okay.
But in the best possible way. Like, you can tell already that this is going to be a delicious, dangerous drink. Just smell it.
The good kind of boozy?
Yeah.
I gotta be honest, that smells like when I first walked in here and there were steaming whiskey barrels here at the Deschutes Brewing warehouse, and all that delicious whiskey was evaporating into the air. A lot of chocolate, a little bitterness, roasty, coffee notes.
It makes me smile. This one...
I'm smiling too.
I haven't even tasted it yet, and I'm pumped.
I might not get this one
beautiful.
back if I don't reach for it.
This is just a remarkably, deliciously easy drinker. And the flavor combination, you wouldn't even really know that you were drinking beer, to be perfectly honest.
Oh, I would know.
No.
Oh, that is malty.
So malty.
It's so dark and flavorful. That is absolutely remarkable. But I want to know what it does to the whiskey.
I keep forgetting that we're supposed to be going back and forth. I've been enjoying the
We have an
beer so
agenda
much.
here. We have
I
to talk
know.
about both.
I know. Yum, that is delicious. Pick one of those up.
Pick a whole bunch of them up.
Oh my gosh, there was cinnamon on this sip.
And a ton of malt.
That changed the complexity of the drink 100%.
Entirely.
Like, this sip was so much different than the first two beers that we paired with it.
Yes.
Wow. This is a fun experiment.
Going back to the beer, I gotta. You could do we're doing a cursory tasting. You could spend a lot of time.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Seeking out the flavors in both any one of these beers so far and the whiskey.
This one has the most, I don't know, whiskiness about it. And that oaky presence, that cinnamon flavor, that really showed.
And I also think that sipping this whiskey
Yeah.
and then going to a beer that's been aged in whiskey barrels, what you're doing is a lot of times the whiskey on a beer can be a little overpowering. I don't find that on this, but going to the whiskey and then going to that beer, what you're getting is more sweetness, more of the rich decadence of the malt that's in there, which is really special, I think, because all of that time aged and going back and forth in barrels and all that stuff really creates some unbelievable flavors. You may not find them if all you're getting from it is whiskey, if you're not drinking a whiskey on the side. It's a nice way to open up some really terrific flavors in that beer.
You can tell these were friends.
I think we're friends with it now.
Black Butte Non-Alcoholic really carries over the Black Butte Porter attributes. It maintains the Black Butte Porter characteristics of coffee notes and some rich, chocolate malts and things like that.
So we just got back from traveling. We saw a lot of non-alcoholic beer out there. Starting to see that pop up. I'm excited to try this.
Yeah, we saw a ton of it in Europe in various countries while we were there, but we really either didn't see it or just didn't pay attention to it when we were
Right.
here in America. Well, I think we need to check this one out.
excited.
With all, hopefully, the same flavors as Black Butte Porter. And I gotta say, I don't see a ton of non-alcoholic porters out there.
No. I'm a big porter fan, by the way.
Is that right?
Yeah.
That you think that's your favorite?
Yeah. For some reason, I always confuse porters with stouts, and I always order a stout, and I always wish that I ordered the porter.
I've never regretted a stout.
And a non-alcoholic, sometimes you feel like something's going to be missing, but you actually do get all of those flavors on this drink.
Yeah, it's actually surprisingly bready and flavorful.
Super bready.
Still roasty, toasty, and I don't know if it's a good idea to pair your non-alcoholic beer with a whiskey, but if you just want to have a beer and a whiskey without the added alcohol, I think it makes sense. Let's try the whiskey
I
to see
actually
what
think
happens.
it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, probably.
Nice.
It's like some sort of cookie with frosting on it now, like a sugar cookie.
I was gonna say, I don't know if it's like the combination of doing these all in a row, but this was almost like an exclamation point at the end. Like when I went back to the whiskey, it tasted so wonderfully cohesive, so beautifully balanced. All the flavors that we were getting along the lines kind of showed up in this one drink. Maybe it has to do with the pairing. This was a great combination.
Yeah, I have to say I'm not disappointed at all in the non-alcoholic beer. Not
Yeah.
that I thought I would be, but I just don't drink them. I'm just very surprised that there's that much flavor in it, that it's
Oh my gosh, this is good.
it's that much like the rest of its siblings here. Very, very good, and the Cask Strength pairs beautifully off of that.
I was gonna say, this gives you enough of that maltiness, enough of that chocolate, a little bit of that nuttiness that you're getting in the regular porter without that added alcohol.
That pesky alcohol.
With that pesky alcohol, because I mean, you're drinking it, if you're pairing this, right? And maybe if you're drinking, you're right, maybe if you're drinking a non-alcoholic beer, you don't want to pair it with a whiskey.
But if you do-
standalone, beautiful, with this whiskey,
Yeah.
I think it adds just a creaminess, loveliness to that sip.
Creaminess is a great way to say it, because what I was just going to say is the one thing we haven't talked about a ton here is mouthfeel. The Black Butte whiskey, the Cask Strength, is oily. It really coats the mouth. The finish lasts an eternity. What I love about pairing it with this particular beer is that this might be the creamiest of the beers that we've tried today.
Agreed.
And it brings out that creaminess in this whiskey. I didn't really think about it until I paired it with that beer. Fascinating.
When we paired it with, say, the porter or the anniversary beer, right, we picked up flavors that were present in those drinks. I don't know what it was about this that made it like just seem super creamy, super enjoyable, but it really did. I mean, no complaints on my end today.
No, they all seem to bring out totally different flavors,
Yes.
both with the whiskey and with the beer. This last one here, what I really liked about it is it brought out a creaminess, and it was the texture that was so special on that last sip. And I have to say, each one of these brought something really special to the table and to one another.
This was a fun day.
A great day.
Yeah.
When is it not fun to go to one of your
Agreed.
favorite breweries, trying some rare beers, rare whiskeys, and with rare people? What can you say? From wherever we are.
To wherever you are.
Cheers.
Cheers. So good.